Modi's government is the one that has fostered injustice. It wants to mislead the country's youth.
His critics call him dangerous and say he is weakening India's secular identity. But can anything stand in the way of Narendra Modi winning a third term as India's Prime Minister? The elections were called earlier today. We'll check in. Welcome to Your World Tonight. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Also tonight, 1 year after 7 people died in a Montreal fire, families of the victims say they are frustrated by the slow pace of the criminal investigation. Later in the program, for 4 decades, Edward Burtynsky's lens has been focused on the climate crisis. The Canadian photographer is now being celebrated in London.
I think it's a great time to actually have my work out there and to really talk about biodiversity loss and talk about what's happening to the climate.
But climate change activists say photographs alone aren't enough to inspire a green revolution. From the peaks of the Himalayas down to the Indian Ocean and all the densely packed cities in between, nearly 1 billion people are eligible to vote in India's national elections. Voting in the world's largest democracy starts in April and will happen in stages over 6 weeks. Polls suggest the ruling BJP will win another majority, securing Narendra Modi a third term as Prime Minister. But this may be one of the most divisive elections India has ever seen. Neha Punya kicks off our coverage tonight from New Delhi.
We as a nation are set to reiterate our pledge to electoral democracy.
India's Chief Election Commissioner setting the stage for the world's largest election. Announcing details of the elections, which will run from April to June, to the country's nearly 1 billion eligible to cast a ballot. And pledging to ensure the polls are held freely and fairly. But incumbent Prime Minister Narendra Modi has already claimed victory.
The country has given its verdict. The results have been announced. This time my party will secure an even bigger majority.
Modi has also been travelling the country, reminding voters that India became the world's fastest growing economy under his rule, and that he has ensured the majority Hindu population can proudly reclaim its cultural heritage. In January, Modi inaugurated a Hindu temple built in the name of Lord Ram on the site of a razed 16th century mosque. It's a controversial move, but one that one opinion poll suggests endeared him to nearly half of the respondents.
Of course, the Ram Temple is an important issue to me. It is closely linked to my faith. What is wrong with promoting Hindu nationalism? We are a Hindu majority country after all.
Our Lord Ram has finally returned home. Nobody should object to that.
Modi's government also formulated rules this month allowing all but Muslims from neighbouring countries to seek Indian citizenship. The UN and the US call that legislation discriminatory and a breach of India's human rights obligations.
Namaskar, kaise aap log?
Opposition parties are attacking Modi on the issue, claiming he's destroying India's secular identity. The country is home to the third largest Muslim population in the world. Rahul Gandhi is the de facto leader of the main opposition party, the Indian National Congress.
Modi's government is the one that has fostered injustice. It wants to mislead the country's youth, distract them with issues like the Ram Temple.
Led by the Congress, nearly 24 opposition parties have come together in a bid to defeat Modi, but have been struggling to keep their alliance from fracturing over regional differences. Experts say the alliance could dent Modi's vote share in some regions, especially in the south, where the BJP hasn't yet made inroads. They'll also be counting on the support of thousands of farmers, a crucial voting bloc representing half of the country's workforce. Many have been protesting in the northern region of Punjab for a month, demanding a guaranteed minimum price for their crops. But Modi is leading most polls, and the ongoing protest doesn't seem to have hit his ratings yet. If he does win, he will become only the second Indian leader to get 3 back-to-back terms. His critics warn another Modi win could change India's political landscape forever and further diminish space for dissent and opposition in the world's largest democracy. Neha Punia for CBC News, New Delhi.
In western Russia, the sound of fire and air raid sirens filled the streets of the city of Belgorod after it was hit by Ukrainian airstrikes. Attacks on the city about 40 kilometers north of the Russia-Ukraine border have become common. Russian officials say at least 2 people were killed in these strikes. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, crews dig through debris from a Russian missile attack on the city of Odessa on Friday. At least 20 people were killed and more than 70 others injured. It's the deadliest attack Ukraine has seen from Russia in weeks. And Vladimir Putin will almost certainly win a 5th term as president after polls in Russia close tomorrow. The war in Ukraine is the key issue in that election. Putin promises his country will be victorious in its war effort, and he plans to spend 1/3 of the national budget to see that goal to the end. Briar Stewart explains how Putin is still able to fund his war chest despite financial pressure from the West.
A video taken in Ryazan, Russia this week captured the moment a Ukrainian drone crashed into an oil refinery, sparking a major fire. It's one of several drone attacks that Ukraine has launched at Russia's energy infrastructure, a crucial part of the Kremlin's ability to keep funding the war. Despite a price cap imposed by Western countries to try to limit how much Russia can sell its oil for, it's found workarounds, including by selling more of it to India and China.
For coming 12, 18 months, he has enough resources. Putin has money to continue to fulfill its war machine.
Alexander Prokopenko used to work as an advisor at Russia's central bank, but left Russia along with hundreds of thousands of others after it launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The mass exodus is one of the reasons the country is now facing a labor shortage, but its economy is not on the brink of collapse as some might have predicted. Prokopenko says that's because Russia has adapted.
It is all a mice and cats game. So any delays in terms of taking decisions and sanctions gives Russia opportunity to adjust.
Businesses have also made changes. In a warehouse in Moscow, Italian cheese and pasta line the shelves. Roberto Meglione said he had to find new routes to bring the products in after European transport companies stopped operating in Russia. Prices have increased, he said. We need to prepare more documents, more certificates, but there's still an opportunity to bring in Italian products. Many products from Western companies that pulled out of Russia are also still available. The latest iPhones and MacBooks are for sale at malls in Moscow. The devices are being imported to Russia via third countries.
Russian Coca-Cola,
in other cases, Russia is creating homegrown alternatives.
You see, the bottle is very similar. And
Marina Lubanovskaya drinks a bottle of Russia's version of Coca-Cola during a Zoom call with CBC News. She's a Moscow-based travel agent, but also has a YouTube channel which includes video tours through Russian grocery stores. She says she's trying to reach a Western audience to dispel rumors about life in Russia under sanctions.
Prices are rising and rising. But I think it's normal situation for all countries nowadays.
Russia's central bank has raised its interest rate to 16% in an effort to curtail inflation. Last year, the price of eggs surged by more than 40%, but Russia was able to adjust again. It scrapped import duties on them so it could quickly bring in more eggs from, quote, friendly countries. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Talks for a ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas could restart as soon as Sunday. Hamas is offering to free dozens of hostages in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinians being held in Israeli jails. Hamas also wants any temporary truce to lead to a permanent ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has previously called that offer unrealistic. As Philip Lee Shannock reports, humanitarian agencies say a ceasefire is needed to get aid into Gaza fast.
In Tel Aviv, a small group of protesters scuffle with Israeli police. Thousands came out to protest Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's regime, calling for immediate elections. Yoram Gadot says he, like many, want an end to the war in Gaza.
Benjamin Netanyahu is leading us to a catastrophe, and we must to have election as soon as possible. Otherwise, we are all going to be in a bad situation.
Despite loud calls from within Israel and around the world, Netanyahu has approved Israeli Defense Force plans to attack Rafah. It says the southernmost city in Gaza is the last Hamas stronghold. It's also a place of refuge for more than 1 million displaced Palestinians. The United States and other countries have warned that an assault on Rafah could be disastrous and want a clear plan to safeguard civilians. United Nations spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric hopes negotiations are successful.
And we continue to hope that we will the parties will find a way to a ceasefire to ensure the greater humanitarian access, to ensure the release of all the hostages held by Hamas and others in Gaza, and frankly to open up a way forward for the people of Palestine and the people of Israel.
With thousands of people at risk of starvation made worse by a collapsed health system, aid missions are also hoping to find a way forward. Today, Germany joined airdrop operations, parachuting pallets full of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Beans, canned meat, flour, and rice have also been offloaded from the Spanish aid ship Open Arms, loaded in Larnaca, Cyprus by World Central Kitchen. Juan Camilo is with the charity and says more is ready to be shipped to Gaza, but it's a fraction of what's needed.
Of course, we need to keep opening the land crossing and having more access because there is not enough aid right now arriving to Gaza.
The level of destruction was post-apocalyptic.
Dr. John Kaler is a pediatrician with the aid group Med Global who is in Gaza. He says what he's witnessed is worse than what he's seen in Syria, Haiti, and other conflict regions.
The humanitarian corridors need to be open to permit at least 500 to 700 trucks a day to come in. It's not like they're not there. You can see them across the border.
The United Nations estimates that a quarter of the besieged population is now at risk of starvation. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
A Hong Kong court has handed down prison sentences to 12 people for storming the city's legislature 5 years ago. Actor Gregory Wong and former student leader Althea Swin are among them. In July 2019, hundreds of protesters entered the building, defacing pictures and smashing furniture. They were protesting a proposed extradition law to allow criminal suspects to be tried in mainland China. They'll serve sentences of up to 7 years. Well, there's been yet another incident with a Boeing airplane. Shortly after a United Airlines flight landed in Oregon yesterday, an external panel was found to be missing. As freelance reporter Nick Harper tells us, it's just the latest in a string of issues for Boeing.
Everyone's just in shock. That's what it is. Everyone's in shock.
It's been a week of turbulence for the US plane maker Boeing. 2 incidents causing it a bumpy ride. The latest came to light after a Boeing plane operated by United Airlines landed in Oregon, only for crews to discover it was without a panel, the missing part exposing a section of the underside of the aircraft. The plane had landed safely and there were no injuries, but incoming and outgoing flights were cancelled, while ground teams searched for the panel. Amber Judd is the airport's director.
We didn't find any debris or any panels or anything. So it was reopened and everybody landed and operations continue normally.
In a statement, United said it would conduct an investigation to better understand how this damage occurred.
Everyone be calm. It's okay.
The incident followed a LATAM flight from Australia to New Zealand on Monday that dropped sharply without warning.
And keep your seatbelt fastened until the seatbelt sign is turned off.
Some passengers were thrown upwards into the plane's ceiling. The sudden drop was reportedly caused when a flight attendant accidentally knocked a switch, which pushed the pilot's seat into the controls. But pilot and aviation attorney Alan Armstrong isn't so sure.
I'm perplexed. I'm not getting how this switch gets activated by a flight attendant. I'm not understanding how that's even possible. No, I don't think we've got the full story. I really don't.
Several years of safety incidents and accidents have put Boeing in a tailspin. Incidents like a door plug blowing out mid-flight on an Alaska Airlines plane in early January, or the 2018 and 2019 crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia, which resulted in the deaths of almost 350 people. Safety aviation consultant Keith Mackey says each new problem brings more reputational damage.
Anytime anything happens on a Boeing airplane, the blame immediately goes back to Boeing as far as public perception is concerned. So they've got to do something to convince the public that they have corrected the problem, and going forward, we're going to go back to the old quality that we used to have years ago.
Since January's Alaska Airlines incident, Boeing's share price has plunged almost 25%. But confidence could be waning beyond just shareholders, as US regulators and the flying public keep a wary eye on the airline giant. Nick Harper for CBC News, Washington.
Still ahead, a business owner speaks out after she moved manufacturing to Canada from China and was hit with a $50,000 bill. Why she says she was penalized. Coming up on Your World Tonight. A year after a deadly fire in Old Montreal, which killed 7 people, families remain heartbroken and angry. Heartbroken for the loss of loved ones, angry over what they say is a lack of movement on the case. Sarah Levitt has more.
Almost a year later, we still feel shock and disbelief that this has happened and our son has been taken from us.
Sitting in their New Brunswick home, Randy and Beth Sears look at photos of their son Nathan. Randy says his emotions run the gamut.
Confusion, anger.
Anger over what happened in the early hours of March 16th last year. A fire broke out at a heritage building in Old Montreal. Flames billowing out along with thick black smoke, their force breaking windows. 7 died, including Nathan. In the months following the fire, much came to light. 6 of the 7 killed were staying in illegal Airbnbs at the time. The building had been flagged numerous times over the years for fire safety violations. 6 months into the investigation,
the accidental cause has now been ruled out.
Montreal police deemed it criminal in nature. Radio-Canada has learned the main suspect is a convicted murderer who'd escaped prison years before. Nobody has been charged.
I mean, how can that happen, Sarah? It's not only tragedy of human failure, but it's a comedy of errors.
The Sears launched a lawsuit claiming the building's owner, the tenant running the short-term rentals, and Airbnb all played a role in what happened that morning. The city of Montreal was later added to the lawsuit. Other victims' families have joined the suit. So too have survivors.
It's still something, it's probably the most lasting scar I think I have from that day is the survivor's guilt.
Benjamin Majid was visiting Montreal with his then partner. They managed to get out of the building in time. Now he feels, much like others, frustrated.
It just feels like such a juxtaposition of the immediate help that we received that morning versus what feels like glacial pace of the investigation.
In all this, our loved ones lost, like Zafar Mahmoud's daughter, Dania Zafar.
A year has passed. Nothing has happened so far.
Mahmoud visits Dania's grave in her hometown of Lahore, Pakistan, often.
I just sit there and just close my eyes and think of that Dania is with me. And when the cool breeze blows, I think it's Dania's touch.
The families of the victims feel many are to blame for what happened, and getting accountability is only one way to move forward. Montreal police wouldn't comment, citing the ongoing investigation. Airbnb is negotiating a possible settlement with the families. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
You are listening to Your World Tonight from CBC News. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. You can hear Your World Tonight and other CBC radio programs wherever you are on your favorite podcast app. Many Canadian companies produce their goods overseas to cut costs. But a business that decided to bring manufacturing home has run into an increased cost for a reason they didn't expect: federal tariffs. Senior business reporter Anise Haydari has the details.
It would make me want to tell others, don't bother bringing your business back to Canada. Do it overseas. It's safer that way.
Sarah Feldstein founded Barumba Play back in 2021. Her company is based in Markham, Ontario, and it makes toy couches for kids. They're easily assembled and disassembled into forts and used to be made overseas.
By manufacturing a toy in China, you can import it to Canada completely tariff-free.
Tariffs are a type of duty or tax applied to imports. They aren't applied to toys in this situation. A couple of years ago, Feldstein decided she didn't want to import, and she moved manufacturing to Ontario, except for one part. The slip covers for the couches were still imported from China. She got advice saying they were still part of a toy, so no tariff. Until
last summer, I received a letter from the CBSA saying, actually, it's not a toy, it's fabric. And we're going to group you in with carpets, bed linens, and table linens. And we want you to pay an 18% duty, not just going forward, but retroactive for the last couple years.
Her business is now on the hook for around $50,000 in tariffs. She's appealing, but in the meantime has to pay the money anyway. It's a lot for her small business.
I onshored my manufacturing to Canada from China and have been penalized for it.
The Canada Border Services Agency didn't agree to an interview, and they did not provide a statement by the deadline for CBC News.
If you don't pay it, they will go after you, even if you're launching an appeal.
David Rotfleisch is a tax lawyer. He says business tariffs are not like income taxes, where collection can be paused.
Wrong assessments have to go out of business because they can't pay it. And by the time the appeal process runs its course, which is going to take time, they can't manage it. So they have to literally shut their doors.
I think it's difficult to paint that with all one brush.
Jennifer Bartman is a business advisor south of Winnipeg. She says big could be a problem, though, if companies don't have to pay while their appeals go through.
You could have companies not paying attention to the rules, saying, well, we'll go ahead and do this, and if it goes wrong, we're not going to be out of pocket anytime soon. What is important here is to get the right advice sooner rather than later, to ask the right questions first.
2 new products.
Back in Markham, Sarah Feldstein says she did that, but what's happening now didn't match the advice she got beforehand.
I'm very hesitant to spend money on other items right now when this is in limbo.
She stopped investing in her business because she needs to set aside money for these tariffs.
I'm not sure how it's going to play out, except that I have to know that 2024 might be my last year.
Bringing manufacturing back to Canada, an expensive proposition, all over some slipcovers. Anise Haydari, CBC News, Calgary.
Meanwhile, on a rink in Toronto,
the UNB Reds, an absolutely stellar performance here at
the University of New Brunswick Reds trounced the hockey squad from Toronto Metropolitan University 7-0. UNB has been unstoppable in the U Sports Men's Hockey Championship. The team has been completely undefeated all season, 46 wins in a row. And they hope to continue their perfect season tomorrow in the final. Their opponent in that match depends on the outcome of tonight's game between McGill and UQTR. Well, you could be forgiven for mistaking some of Edward Bertinsky's photos for abstract paintings. At first glance, all you see are geometric shapes, colors, textures. But look at the bigger picture, and you'll see a landscape ravaged by coal mining, or the slick, marbled pattern of an oil spill. The Canadian photographer has spent 40 years documenting humanity's impact on the planet. The largest collection of his career is now on display in London. But as Lauren Sproul reports, it's getting mixed reaction from climate activists.
School children play capture the flag on the green outside West London's prestigious Saatchi Gallery, making the most of an unseasonably warm February day.
They're the exhibitions of the first and second.
And inside the gallery, Canadian photographer Edward Bertinsky is fighting for their future with his art.
Don't have the same power fighting on behalf of a future planet and on behalf of the next generation, but we have a lot of power fighting for a profit.
Bertinsky is currently showing the largest collection of his career at the gallery, displaying more than 30 years' worth of his environmentally focused photography.
The urgency that I've been feeling over the last decade has now hit a kind of a fever pitch.
Burtynsky's exhibition features 94 large format photographs, 13 murals, an augmented reality experience, and an immersive film presentation. It brings its viewers down amongst the trees of Canada's boreal forest, as well as countless other places around the globe. But whether or not Burtynsky has been successful in his mission is uncertain.
And I'm not sure I need to know the details of whether it's in Senegal or Turkey.
Tony Greenwood is visiting the gallery with his photography group.
I mean, it's interesting, but to be honest with you, I prefer to just stand back and just be a bit awestruck.
But up on the third floor of the gallery, next to a large-scale photo of a shipyard in China, Mark and Helen Smith have been inspired.
We may need to rethink the way we operate.
Self-proclaimed fans of Burtynsky, the Smiths say this gentle form of activism is much more thought-provoking for them than protests.
This is a far better way of getting people to think about an act than protest. Protest just alienates me. Somebody gluing themselves to the top of a train or whatever, it's just getting in my way.
He's referring to the handiwork of Just Stop Oil, a British environmental activist group. The organization have come to prominence in recent years, making headlines for gluing themselves to central London streets and disrupting international sporting events.
We are destroying our only home.
Adrian Johnson is a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil.
We're basically talking about the need for a revolution. The government, the media in general, are just not getting the message through reliably, accurately, and fully enough to the general public.
When asked whether the work Burtynsky is doing to forward the green agenda can affect change, Johnson says that while the cause needs all the crusaders it can get, photographs alone are not enough.
That is why I would say there is the need and the legitimate invitation for civil disobedience.
Burtynsky says his aim is to inspire conversation.
I think that's where my greatest soft power lies, as an artist.
And though the means may differ, Burtynsky with his camera and Just Stop Oil with their disruptive actions, the focus remains the same. Lauren Sproul, CBC News, London.
That is the theme song for this year's Arctic Winter Games. It's by the band Portugal the Man. The members are from the Matsu Valley, Alaska, which is where this year's Olympics of the North have been held. They feature Arctic sports created by the indigenous peoples of the circumpolar region, traditionally as ways to keep fit, to live off the land. Things like the knuckle hop. Picture yourself parallel to the floor, propelling forward using your knuckles and toes, and you can already see why the knuckle hop is as hard as Parker Kennick from Team Alaska describes.
The knuckle hop is extremely painful, and it's just one of the endurance events that we have. And so for the knuckle hop to want to push to do it, it's a real testament to yourself and your spiritual force.
This year, host Team Alaska has claimed the most gold ulus, which is the word for a traditional knife. Team Yukon came in second. And we want to give a special shout out to the daughter of our very own CBC North senior reporter, Juanita Taylor. Danica Taylor has won 5 ulus, including golds in the arm pull, the 2-foot high kick, and the Alaskan high kick. She is Team Nunavut's flag bearer at tonight's closing ceremony. Aside from the feats of strength and sport, there was also a concert by the band Bumyua, which features indigenous Alaskan and Danish singers and dancers. So, as we wait for the next Arctic Winter Games 2 years from now in Yukon, we'll leave you with some more from Bumyua on Your World Tonight. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Thank you for being with us. Good night.